The people who found their purpose are lying to you. They're telling the story backwards, starting from the ending and pretending the whole journey was a straight line. And that backward story is doing real damage. Because every year you spend waiting to discover what you were meant to do is a year you could have spent building something that actually matters to you. Most of us grew up with a specific script. Somewhere inside you, there's a calling, a destiny, a thing you were born to do. Your job is to find it, and once you do, everything clicks into place. It sounds beautiful. It also has almost no evidence behind it. Researchers at Stanford studied how people's beliefs about passion shape their behavior. One group believed passion was found, a fixed thing waiting to be discovered. The other believed passion was developed, something that grows through effort and investment. When both groups hit the inevitable rough patch in a new interest, the Find Your Passion group quit. They interpreted difficulty as a sign they'd picked wrong. The Develop Your Passion group pushed through. Same obstacle, wildly different response. That difference matters more than it seems on the surface. Think about the last time you abandoned something, a hobby, a side project, a career idea. How much of that decision came from genuine misalignment? And how much came from a quiet voice saying, if this were really my thing, it wouldn't be this hard? That voice sounds wise. It sounds like intuition. It's actually a belief system doing what belief systems do, filtering your experience to confirm itself. The discovery model treats purpose like a buried treasure. You dig in the right spot, you find the chest, you're set for life. The construction model treats purpose like a building. You lay one brick, then another, and the structure reveals itself through the process of making it. One model requires luck and patience. The other requires decisions and labor. So where did the treasure hunt version come from? You can trace it to a very specific cultural moment. The Romantic era of the late 1800s elevated the idea of the individual genius, the artist born with a gift, the leader born with a destiny. Before that, for most of human history, purpose was inherited. You did what your parents did. You were a blacksmith because your father was a blacksmith. The question, what should I do with my life, would have been incoherent to a medieval farmer. Purpose was given, not chosen. Then industrialization blew that structure apart. Suddenly, people had options, and options need a framework. The framework we landed on was, look inside yourself. The answer is already there. It's a comforting framework. It's also paralyzing. A psychologist named William Damon spent years studying how young adults develop a sense of purpose. His findings were consistent. The people with the strongest sense of purpose didn't start with a grand vision. They started with a small engagement, a class that caught their attention, a volunteer shift that moved them, a conversation that stuck. Purpose crystallized around action, accumulated over time like sediment forming rock, layer by layer. The grand vision, when it eventually appeared, was a retrospective story, a narrative imposed on a messy, non-linear process. And the people still searching. They were waiting for certainty before committing, waiting to feel the lightning bolt, waiting for the moment when everything would suddenly make sense. That moment almost never arrives on its own. Here's what makes this worse. The waiting feels productive. You're reading books about finding your calling. You're taking personality assessments. You're journaling about your values. All of that feels like progress because it requires effort and thought. But effort spent in your own head, without external feedback, tends to loop. You refine the same ideas, you revisit the same fantasies. You mistake rumination for reflection. A study out of the University of Michigan tracked people through career transitions and found that those who tried new activities, even random ones, even ones they weren't sure about, developed clearer professional identities faster than those who spent equivalent time in self-reflection. The act of doing something, anything, generated data. Real data. The kind you can only get by colliding with the world instead of theorizing about it from your couch. This is the part where the skeptic in you might push back. Some people really do have a calling from childhood. Mozart was composing at 5. Isn't that discovery? Fair point. And yes, some people show early intense alignment with a specific domain, but even Mozart's story is messier than the myth. His father was one of Europe's leading music teachers. Young Wolfgang was immersed in structured musical training before he could read. The talent was real. The environment that shaped and directed it was equally real. Calling it pure discovery ignores the thousands of hours of construction that happened before the talent became visible. The construction model handles prodigies just fine. Some people start building earlier. Some have better raw materials. The building still has to happen. So what does building purpose actually look like in practice? It looks boring. That's the part nobody puts on a podcast. It looks like showing up to the same work on Tuesday when the excitement from Monday has faded. It looks like tolerating the phase where you're bad at something long enough to find out whether getting better at it changes how you feel about it. It looks like making a commitment before you have complete information, because complete information never arrives. The Japanese concept of ikigai gets cited often in these conversations, usually as a Venn diagram of 4 circles: what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, what you can be paid for. The diagram is clean. Life is not. The real insight from Ikigai research, the original studies on elderly residents of Okinawa, had nothing to do with Venn diagrams. It had to do with having a reason to get up in the morning. The reason was often small: tending a garden, teaching a grandchild, feeding the neighborhood cats. Purpose at scale is built from purpose at the daily level. The grand mission is just the small mission repeated enough times to develop gravity. One of the most useful reframes comes from the philosopher Kierkegaard, who wrote that life can only be understood backwards, but must be lived forwards. The people who tell you they found their purpose are understanding backwards. They're drawing the line from where they are now back through every decision that led here and calling it fate. You're trying to draw the line forward from where you are now to some unknown destination and calling the inability to see the endpoint a personal failure. You're comparing your rough draft to their final edit. The practical shift is smaller than you'd expect. Stop asking, "What is my purpose?" and start asking, "What am I willing to build today?" The first question has no answer until you've lived it. The second question has an answer right now, and the accumulation of those daily answers, over months and years, becomes the thing that the first question was always pointing toward. You've probably already started this process without naming it. Think about the skills you've built, the problems you keep gravitating toward, the complaints you have about how things should work. There's signal in all of that. The signal just doesn't arrive as a lightning bolt. It arrives as a pattern, visible only in the rearview mirror, assembled from hundreds of small choices you made when you thought you were just getting through the week. The myth of discovery asks you to wait for something that feels like certainty. The practice of construction asks you to act in the presence of doubt. One of those strategies produces a life, the other produces a very well-curated bookshelf about finding yourself. Your purpose is a building. The foundation is already poured. You poured it with every choice you've made so far, whether you were paying attention or not. The question was never where is it buried. The question is what you're going to add to the structure tomorrow morning.